Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really compelling stack of sources in front of us today, a whole collection of articles and videos, and they're all focused on one big idea, how to transform your outdoor space with things like native wildflowers and, smarter gardening.
Exactly. And our mission here is to synthesize all of this knowledge, really. Yeah. We want to cut through the noise and give you the essential playbook for creating a garden that's thriving, low maintenance, and maybe most importantly, ecologically resilient.
I love that. A thriving garden with minimum effort. That sounds like the ultimate win to me. But, before we even get into the planting, the sources open with this one insight that completely changed how I look at flower beds now.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about static color, is it?
No, not at all. We tend to focus on the color, right? The fixed aesthetic.
Right.
But the real appeal of native wildflowers, the thing that psychologically hooks us, is that combination of color and motion.
Color and motion.
Yeah.
So we're not just putting, a static painting in the yard. We're creating a whole dynamic ecosystem.
You've got it. I mean, think about the difference between a picture on the wall and a living film. The color changes with the seasons, sure, but the motion comes from the plants constantly moving, how they cycle through flowering and going to seed, how they dance in the wind.
And all the life they attract.
And crucially, the frenetic activity of the life they attract. The garden never looks the same 2 hours in a row. It's that constant dynamic element that makes the whole experience so much richer.
That completely reframes the whole design idea. It's not just what colors match my house, it's what plants will guarantee movement all season.
Exactly. And that movement is what guarantees the what we're calling the ecological value proposition we're here to talk about.
Okay, let's unpack this. The material suggests wildflowers are the solution for so many gardening headaches. High level, we're talking maximum impact for minimum effort and way fewer resources like water, fertilizer, pesticides.
Those savings are huge, yeah. But the core benefits are, you could say, structural. The material listed what it called the 7 wonderful advantages. And what's so interesting is how deep these benefits really run. Take soil health, for example. We're not talking about something that just looks good on the surface.
Tell us more about that, the soil building part.
Well, wildflowers, especially the native ones, have these incredibly deep and varied root systems. They're nothing like turf grass.
Okay.
These roots, they act like structural rebar for the soil. They hold it together, they stop erosion, and they pull a massive amount of organic matter deep into the ground. That varied root depth is key for rapid carbon sequestration.
Wow.
Which is a huge non-visual benefit that connects your little garden to, global health.
So by planting a bed of natives, you are literally improving the ground quality from the subsurface up.
You are. And that deep-rooting structure, it leads directly to the next point. Water conservation. Since these plants are adapted to your local climate, they're just inherently more drought tolerant.
Right. They expect the dry spells.
They do. So they need way less supplemental watering. They're perfect for getting through a hot summer without you having to constantly be out there with a hose.
Okay, so that handles the resources and the labor. But what does all this structural improvement mean for the actual life living there?
Well, that brings us to biodiversity, which is really the anchor of the whole thing. These plants support a massive variety of life. The sources cited nearly 1,600 plant species being anchored by these systems, which in turn...
1,600?
Yeah. And that supports countless birds, small mammals, and insects. That high plant diversity makes the whole local environment more resilient to things like climate shifts and pest outbreaks. It creates a stable food web.
Now, I have to challenge this low maintenance claim because it was stated again and again. If I had to clear out everything that's already there, loosen the soil, maybe even reduce the fertility, that sounds like a lot of work up front.
And that is a really important distinction to make. It's a fair point.
So what does low maintenance actually mean here?
The maintenance curve for a native garden is it's inverted compared to a traditional lawn. A lawn needs weekly work, fertilizer, water, forever.
Right.
A native wildflower garden demands intense effort up front in that site preparation. But once it's established, the weekly maintenance drops to almost nothing. It becomes self-sustaining. You front-load all the work to unlock long-term freedom.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you're building a self-cleaning engine, not a machine that needs constant fueling.
Precisely. And we shouldn't forget the human benefit the material mentioned, human well-being. Just being around these complex, dynamic, flower-rich spaces, it's been linked directly to reducing stress and improving your mood. It's a return on investment for your own mental health.
So it's an investment in the planet, your wallet, and your brain. Okay, that deep support for life brings it to the most crucial part, pollinators. We know something like 75% of the world's flowering plants need them.
They are the essential workforce, and they're so much more varied than most people think.
And this is where the source material had some truly surprising stats on efficiency, specifically about the mason bee. This is where we get into the details of the insect superstars.
The mason bee, or Osmia spp, is just fascinating. It's not your typical honeybee. They're small, they're solitary, they don't build those massive, aggressive hives.
And they're docile.
Incredibly docile. They only sting if you, physically aggravate them, if you squash them or poke them, and even then the sting is really mild.
Okay, and let's address that common confusion, especially for people worried about wooden decks or sheds near their garden.
Yes, this is critical. Mason bees absolutely do not drill holes in wood. They are cavity nesters. They only use existing tunnels, old plant stems, cracks in masonry, or the special paper straws you can provide for them.
So if you see new, perfectly round holes in your porch...
That's the bigger carpenter bee, not the mason bee. They just rent existing abutments. They don't build them.
Okay, but let's get back to that efficiency number. We saw a ratio in the sources that, it almost seems impossible.
It is astounding. 6 mason bees can accomplish the pollination work of 300 honeybees.
Wait, 6 compared to 300? That is a massive multiplier. How can one small, solitary bee be 50 times more effective?
It all comes down to their technique, or, their lack of technique, really. Honeybees are tidy, they moisten pollen, and they pack it into these little saddlebags on their legs, so not much pollen actually gets transferred.
Right, it's very contained.
Very contained. The mason bee is the opposite. It just belly flops into the flower, rolls around, gets pollen all over its body, its head, its abdomen. It's totally messy.
So it carries that loose load right to the next flower.
And that makes the transfer super effective. They are nature's messy, essential worker. Their life cycle is also really interesting. They spend up to a year, sometimes 2, developing in those tubes you provide, and they need freezing temperatures to break dormancy.
And the males hatch first.
The males hatch first in the spring and actually help dig out the females. It's fascinating.
So if we want this tiny superstar working for us, what were the practical tips on attracting and housing them?
You have to give them the nesting habitat. The easiest way is with nesting boxes filled with paper straws or small bore bamboo. The key is they must be kept dry and allowed to breathe.
And there was an interesting warning about where you put them. I would not have thought of this.
Right. Do not place the nesting boxes right next to a porch light. Mason bees, like a lot of insects, are drawn to the light, and they can just exhaust themselves swarming it all night.
Okay, that's a great tip. Switching gears from the bee to the butterfly. We have to understand the difference between a host plant and a nectar source. This was presented as a critical distinction.
It's where a lot of gardeners go wrong. Nectar sources are the flowers the adult butterfly drinks from. That's their gas station.
Okay.
Host plants are the specific plants that the caterpillar, the larva, eats. If you don't have the host plant, the adult butterfly has nowhere to lay its eggs, and you won't get the next generation.
So give us a couple of those host plant heroes we should be looking for.
For the monarch, you absolutely must have swamp milkweed. For the beautiful Gulf fritillary, the sources pointed to the quirky stem passion vine. And you have to be okay with the caterpillars basically destroying it.
That damage is a sign of success.
Exactly. And for those nectar powerhouses that draw in the whole crowd,
Yeah, pay tractors.
the sources loved fire spike, which pulls in hummingbirds, moths, butterflies. Salt and peppermint gets covered in bees and tiny little marine blue butterflies. And tropical sage is just a reliable, high-quality nectar source, especially for hummingbirds.
This is great. So now we get to the practical part. For someone who wants to turn their lawn or an empty bed into one of these spaces, the material's all stressed using native species adapted to your area.
That adaptation is the secret to low maintenance. You're working with the environment, not fighting it. So let's get into the necessary steps for actually sowing wildflower seed.
Okay, we know site prep is the big lift. Let's start with timing. Is plant in spring the best way to go?
For wildflowers, generally no. Fall is the strategic time to plant. If you're in a cold climate, you plant after a couple of killing frosts. In a mild desert, you plant September through December.
And why is that?
The seeds lie dormant all winter. They experience that natural cold, wet stratification, and then they germinate first thing in the spring. It gives them a huge head start on root development before the summer heat arrives.
Okay, so what's the prep for an area that's, weedy or just grass right now?
First, you have to clear every bit of what's there. Then, you just loosen the top inch of soil, and this is key. Wildflowers prefer low to moderate fertility. To create a meadow, you often need to actually reduce the soil's fertility.
Reduce it.
Yeah, you can skim off the rich top layer of soil or mix in some sand. You have to discourage those coarse, nutrient-loving grasses from taking over later.
The sources were very clear about what not to do. It sounds like the two biggest mistakes are timing, which we covered, and crowding. Let's talk about crowding.
The biggest pitfall is overseeding. It is so tempting to just sprinkle extra, but too many plants compete. The vigorous ones will just choke out the more delicate ones, and you could end up with a field of just one or two types of flowers.
So less is more.
Much more. Scatter them carefully, and then for the final step.
What's that?
You press them firmly into the soil. Just walking on them lightly works great. And do not bury them deeply. Most wildflower seeds need light to germinate, which is kind of counterintuitive for a lot of gardeners.
Okay, so what does all this mean for someone with a normal grassy backyard? We know grass is the enemy here.
Grass is incredibly aggressive. Its roots form this dense, competitive mat. So you have two main non-chemical options. One is slow, one is fast.
Let's do the slow solution first.
You can introduce yellow rattle. It's a beautiful semi-parasitic wildflower.
Semi-parasitic.
Yeah, it attaches itself to the roots of the grass and it draws nutrients away, which weakens the grass and pushes it back. This gives the other wildflowers room to establish themselves. It takes a few seasons, but it works.
And the faster option for a smaller area.
Sod removal. You have to physically cut and remove 2 or 3 inches of the sod, the grass, the roots, everything, to expose the bare soil underneath. It's the quickest way to get that blank slate you need.
So once it's established and we've hit that low maintenance goal, do we just let it go wild forever?
No, low maintenance doesn't mean zero maintenance. You have to cut the meadow, but only once or twice a year. The main cut is in late summer after everything has flowered, but here's the critical part. You must always remove the hay after you cut.
Why remove it? Wouldn't that be good mulch?
No, because if you leave it, it creates a thatch layer, and more importantly, it returns nutrients to the soil. We need low nutrients to keep the wildflowers happy, and the grass is suppressed.
Ah, so removing the hay exports the nutrients, keeping the soil poor, which is what the wildflowers want.
That's the key. That's the whole operational detail.
Perfect. Let's finish up by spotlighting some of the cool varieties the sources mentioned, maybe grouping them so they're easy for people to remember.
Sounds good. We can start with the tough spots. For dry or poor soil in full sun, we have the stunning viper bug loss. This is a biennial.
Quick check for the audience. What does biennial mean in practical terms for the gardener?
It means it lives for 2 years. So the first year, it just grows leaves and structure, and then the second year, it flowers, sets seed, and dies. And viper bug loss is magnificent in that second year. Huge spikes of deep blue and purple. It just loves hot, dry, sandy soil.
And we also had yarrow, the tough North American native.
Yarrow is incredibly resilient, very drought resistant, and historically it was used for everything. The sources mention soothing bug bites or even stopping blood loss from wounds. It's a very practical plant.
Okay, let's talk about the long-lived workhorses, the perennials.
You can start with roses. Certain wild varieties are incredibly hardy and can live for well over 100 years. The oldest documented living rose is on a cathedral in Germany. It's been recorded since 815 AD.
Wait, 815 AD? That's almost 1,200 years old. It's a living testament to the fact that the right perennial is an investment that can literally transcend generations.
Absolutely. Then you've got echinacea, or coneflowers. Drought-tolerant, fantastic for pollinators, and they're used in herbal tea to boost the immune system.
And daylilies.
Daylilies give you that continuous color. Each flower only lasts a day, but the plant just keeps producing new blooms from early summer all the way through fall. You mix early, mid, and late varieties, and you get a full season of color and motion.
Finally, we have to cover a couple of plants that came with specific warnings. Lavender, for instance. It seems like it can get out of hand if you neglect it.
Oh, it's a woody herb, and it demands pruning. Lavender must be pruned aggressively every winter. If you don't, it will turn into a, quote, huge woody leggy mess, and it won't perform well. And it hates heavy clay soil.
And what about the common confusion with hydrangeas?
Hydrangeas are beautiful, but they're picky about light. They do best with partial sun, morning sun, maybe dappled afternoon shade. They hate full, intense sun for more than 6 hours a day.
Okay.
And when you prune them, you have to know which type you have.
Why is the type so important for pruning?
Because some bloom on new growth and some bloom on old growth. So, depending on which one you have, that dictates when you can prune it without accidentally cutting off all of next year's flowers.
That is essential knowledge. Before we wrap the plant list, There was one unexpected pollinator food source the sources mentioned that I found
Oh,
hilarious.
the bolted radishes, yes. When a radish goes to seed in flowers, bees absolutely love the blooms. Sometimes when a vegetable seems done, it's really just changing its job.
I love that. And this final quirky detail about bee balm or monarda, the sources called it nectar robbing.
Yes. Because the flower is so long and tubular, some insects, especially bumblebees, they sheet. They just bypass the front door and chew a tiny little hole right at the base of the flower to get the nectar directly. It's a tiny, elegant nectar heist.
That's amazing. We've covered a huge amount of ground here, from redefining the magic of color and motion to that incredible 6 to 300 ratio of the mason bee. We've talked host plants versus nectar plants, and maybe most crucially, proper site prep, and that need to remove the hay from your meadow.
And if you connect all these practical steps to the bigger picture, I mean, what really stands out is that gardening with native wildflowers is fundamentally about ecosystem stabilization. You're moving from a resource-heavy aesthetic to a functional habitat. You're restoring stability.
And that idea of stability brings us back to the stark reality our sources mentioned early on. The reports that July was on track to be the hottest month ever recorded, with extreme weather, heat waves, flooding, all wreaking havoc globally. The act of planting a native wildflower garden, it's often framed as just a hobby, a design choice. But given the reported climate distress and habitat loss, should we see this effort less as simple gardening and more as fulfilling a vital mission of preservation and restoration?
I think that's the only way to look at it now. Every single patch of ground matters.
What small patch of the world can you stabilize today? That's something to think about as you start planning your fall planting. We encourage you to dig deeper into the sources and find the specific native plants that will thrive right where you live. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.